The human brain is wired to absorb and interpret stories, and in a sense, we are the stories we tell. Our home address, parents, where they came from, first crush, first job, our emotions, our outlook, our enemies. All of these pieces tell our story. Stories are so powerful that we create narrative structure where none exists. Seeing a penny and picking it up can't bring you luck, no matter how many black cats you see in a mirror. But we still take our chances. The contrails behind planes in the upper atmosphere are not full of mind control chemicals, but then again, that's what they'd want you to believe. And the world did not end in 2012, no matter how you interpret the fateful Mayan calendar. Stories bring order out of chaos, provide comfort, conform to biases, overpower logic. Lawyers who understand the psychology of storytelling and bring it into their practice and their trial strategies stand to gain improved, if not fairy tale, results. That's what we're covering today on Lawsome. Psychodrama, the psychology of stories, and how we can tell better ones, win trials, and build better law firms. Let's open the book.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that prefers amicus boxers to amicus briefs. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in personal and business development. I am your Colorado co-host, Jake Sanders, and currently scraping out an existence on the shores of Lake Michigan. I am joined by the unstoppable Paul Julius.
Jake, how you doing?
How's it going out there on the lake, man?
It's scrappy.
So, let's get into it. What's on the show today?
On the show today, we look at an article from the American Psychological Association on what lessons lawyers can learn from the latest in psychological research. We interview psychodrama specialist Karen Drucker and learn how she helps trial lawyers and their clients prepare for court. And we place our guest on the hot bench for 10 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The link today is from the American Psychological Association. It's by psychologist Jennifer Robinholt. She's written a new book. It's called Psychology for Lawyers, Understanding the Human Factors in Negotiation, Litigation, and Decision-Making. In this, she basically explains how psychology and lawyers are a match made in heaven. What's your thoughts on this article, Paul?
Well, I'm sure what a match made in heaven. I'm sure there's a lawyer joke in there somewhere, right?
Well, with a prenuptial.
Something. Seriously, I think there's a lot of different ways you can look at it, right? There's the idea of using psychology and law in she mentions how to not crack under pressure, how to learn to deal with these pressure situations or with, things that may be difficult to express. But there's also another side of it where she talks more about the personal side of it, the more emotional well-being. And I know you and I have talked about it a couple times where there, particularly like with family law or something like that, it can take it's difficult. And I can
take a toll. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's kind of these different areas in here where, lawyers may not necessarily focus as much on this psychological aspect when you're so wrapped up in the task aspect of the daily activities, interacting with clients, doing discovery, all that stuff. There's a psychology, I think, that can be kind of gleaned in there too, on how to, not get so bogged down with the tedium that when it's time to step up, and do the actual trial lawyering thing, right? You're just beaten down. That's my take.
Well, I totally agree, and I think that is something I was glossing over because I was describing it as a match made in heaven because when lawyers spend their time persuading, maybe negotiating, trying to understand. So it seems like a fit what we get into later is psychodrama and acting out emotions and trying to get a hold on how those are going to play in a trial situation. So the thing I like about this is it's not logical, it's emotional. So you need to really check in to the way emotions are permeating logic. So, like, not saying, well, that doesn't make sense. It's, well, why does it make sense? And I think there's a little bit of empathy. And as we find out later, too, empathy is this kind of continuing theme. So I'm excited to unpack it and get psychodramatic.
Definitely. And really going with the trials, I think everybody thinks, they say this in the article, that everybody looks to jury selection.
Mm.
Like the psychology of jury selection.
Oh yeah, totally.
But one thing I thought she said that was interesting was that you can use psychologists and psychology to help lawyers prepare witnesses for depositions. And I mean, I don't mean like, prep them in an unethical way, but I mean how to relate their stories effectively, and to kind of overcome what issues they may have, whether it's communication or anxiety or whatever, to make sure that witness is coming across as credible as possible
and authentic. Yeah. And there's a psychology to how you tell a compelling story. So if you don't tell, you can tell a story, but if it's not good, no one's really listening. So there is those intangible aspects to it.
Yeah.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
We really have a relationship with Consultwebs that goes beyond simple business-to-business marketing. We have grown up with them as a company. They were there for us when we started. We were there for them when they started.
So I think that we were Consultwebs' first personal injury client 15 or 16 years ago.
I've been working with them directly for 10 years now, and they've always been a fantastic partner.
It's vitally important to us that when somebody says you should hire Bellick & Fox, and they go to the Bellick & Fox website, they're going to go beyond the website and contact us.
They understand storytelling, they understand technology, they understand a website isn't just text on a page, it's how you create an expectation for what that means to work with us.
When we get a case, they are very excited in a really genuine way that I think reflects the fact that they sort of view their success tied to ours. So that's why we've continued to use them.
I've never had anything but praise for how they've been able to market our website.
Go to consultwebs.com to learn more.
And now, for a Lawsome interview.
Karen Drucker is a practicing psychologist and counselor working in Boulder, Colorado. She has a degree in psychology as well as advanced training in EMDR, brain spotting, body-centered therapy, and psychodrama. Her experience with a wide variety of cultures and worldviews has broadened her practice, and she brings humor and compassion to her counseling. Karen's work with lawyers and law firms preparing clients for trial through psychodramatic practices brought her to the attention of this podcast, and we're delighted to have Karen Drucker on Lawsome today. How are you, Karen?
I'm very well, thank you.
So tell us about psychodrama, just the term itself. Where did it come from? Just give us a little background.
Okay, so psychodrama is a type of psychotherapy that was developed by Jacob Moreno, and he is a doctor, a Viennese psychiatrist who came to the States in 1925. And his wife, Zerka Moreno, is his chief collaborator, and she just recently died at like 99. And she contributed very significantly to the theory and practice. Psychodrama uses lots of different forms of enactment to expand and deepen verbal methods. It brings in the body, the mind, the emotions into action, and does that through dramatic methods, movement, gesture, sound, and helps people get in touch with memories and experiences that might not be accessible to their conscious minds. And that can help with emotional healing. It can give us access to difficult memories that we need to work through, and also access to inner strengths and resources that we might have forgotten about or lost touch with.
How do you use psychodrama to help lawyers specifically?
So most of my work with lawyers now is when a lawyer has a client that they're preparing for a trial or for a deposition, and they feel like that client has a lot of trauma, or they need some support to be able to make a better witness, or the lawyer feels like they don't have the best story to tell. If they feel like it's going to go to trial, they'll sometimes call me in to do a psychodrama with the client before the trial, which helps them be able to better understand the client, better empathize, feel like they understand the client more and are better able to tell their story. So I'll usually do an enactment, for example, with an accident case that is going to a settlement. They probably going for an insurance settlement, and we might do a scene of what the client's life was like before the accident, and then we'll reenact the accident, and then we'll do a scene of what their life is like since the accident, which might entail like really naming and spelling out all the losses that they've incurred, so they can really feel it and see it, and the lawyer can see it, and then they're usually a better able to express themselves at the deposition.
Psychodrama kind of sounds like acting. Why? Sort of the theme of the show is the psychological power behind stories. So why are stories and the psychology behind narrative structure so impactful to humans?
Well, I thought that was a great question. And I thought I need to do some research on this, because I wasn't exactly sure what made it so powerful. But in thinking about it and then looking at things, storytelling is one of the oldest devices of communication. It's from Aboriginal songs to cave paintings. Stories are what build bridges across different geographic areas and centuries. And there's a theory, this is from the Huffington Post, which I really like, that poses that what separates humans from other animals is the moment in our evolution when people began to tell stories. And humans began to imagine and describe things that weren't happening in the present moment, so they could better organize and cooperate with each other. Like saying a lion often comes to this river gives people a chance to prepare, as opposed to there's the lion. Stories, I think, are often what makes our lives worthwhile. It's the way we teach the next generation, reinforce, societal norms, communicate to children how to act towards one another and what we value. I do some work with women veterans with PTSD, and we use something called a story rope when we do a week-long retreat, and we use a story rope in the group and talk about, in African tribal cultures, they would have a story rope, and every knot on the story rope represented something that's happened in the village that's important, a birth or a death or a trauma or a celebration, something you want to honor and acknowledge. And then the village elder carries the story rope and then tells the story of the village. And that's how they communicate. And we do that at the vet courses with putting a knot in when something significant happens in the group.
That's so cool. So for lawyers, getting back to the law firm, are there other applications for psychodrama and your psychological counseling in the law firm, besides trial preparation? A couple ideas: workplace culture. Is there leadership, negotiation tactics. How else can psychology play for lawyers?
I think what I can say about that, I haven't done it in other ways, but I think at the Trial Lawyers College in Wyoming, they're using it in a multitude of ways. I can tell you that psychodrama training was involved when they did bias training with judges in Washington, D.C. quite a while ago, and used psychodrama to train the Secret Service and hostage negotiations. Psychodrama has been used for organizational development, for sexual harassment training. So it has a lot of applications, particularly in education and organizational development and therapy.
What barriers do you face with lawyers who are thinking about psychology and psychodrama? Are they skeptical? Do some of these logical thinking lawyers maybe think this is a little woo-woo?
Well, I don't market my services, so people come to me. So I don't and ask if I can give them support. So I haven't faced that, because anybody that calls me or calls a psychodramatist has seen it work and so believes in it, or they wouldn't be reaching out in that way. I think the clients sometimes are a little bit skeptical. Right? So the client, the lawyer's bringing me in to do this whole enactment. They're the ones who are skeptical. But I think the reason it works is that the client has a lot of trust in their lawyer. And so the lawyer will tell them, I brought Karen in today to do this enactment. It's kind of intense and it might seem a little weird, but believe me, I've seen it work in many situations, and I just think it'll really help our case. So that's why I've asked her to come. So the trust that they have in the lawyer then extends to me.
That makes perfect sense. So lawyers hire you so they can ensure their chance of success in a trial. Are there other intangible benefits of hiring you that lawyers maybe haven't considered or aren't as obvious? Like the client who went through a psychodramatic session and really felt the benefit of it? Or is there some benefit besides just winning trials that maybe lawyers should consider?
Well, I actually reached out to one of the lawyers I work with, Kari Jones-Duell in Denver, and asked her that question, because I was like, well, I don't know what the intangible benefits of hiring me are, but maybe
Nice.
you do.
Yeah,
So
totally.
he said that in one sense, it's therapy for the client, and it can help them begin to resolve some of if they have some post-traumatic stress from accident or whatever their case is, that doing the psychodrama with them can really help them begin to resolve their PTSD.
Awesome.
And then she also said the lawyer finds out how they feel about the client, and that can affect how they represent the client. And then I would say that, better understanding the client's world and being able to be more empathetic might be an intangible benefit.
Totally. It's all intangible at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Have you ever participated in a psychodramatic session that just failed, that didn't reach the desired outcome? And does failure play into your approach to psychology? How can maybe can we change the way we think of failure?
Yeah. Well, I think this is an interesting question, because success or failure for the lawyer might be different for success and failure for me. Like, my goals are that it's useful, that when I come in, that the lawyer feels like it's useful for them for representing the client. But I also have a secondary goal, which is that I want the process to be therapeutic for the client. And sometimes I would say that goal is not always met for me, that it sometimes feels like the client might be really emotionally shut down, or had so much trauma in their life that doing one session is just not sufficient.
Hmm.
to feel like it's therapeutic.
Hmm.
And so, but I think and then I think Carrie responded to this question too. She said that she doesn't think that any of the sessions are ever failures, and that a minimum, she as a lawyer always learns something about her client, and that's a win-win. And then that you can also see, this is what she said that I think is very important, that she can really, when I do a psychodrama with the client, she can really see the strengths of the client and the weaknesses of the client. And every session that she's had, she's learned something new about the case, something that the client never told her until we were in the psychodrama session. So I thought that was really interesting.
That is interesting, and to kind of take that a little bit further with her learning like that. Do you have any actionable tips on psychology in the workplace or psychodramatic exercises that our audience can take back to their firms today and improve their business, or is this something that they need to have a professional working with them?
In psychodrama, we talk about role reversal a lot, so my tips would be to make an effort to role reverse, which really is step into somebody else's shoes, to role reverse with whomever you're interacting with, and listen and validate and empathize, and say things like, say more or tell me more about that, without putting too much of your own take on it.
Yeah, it's empathy. Empathy seems to be a recurring theme a lot of times with some of the shows we do, and I think it's important. So many times people, it seems, are talking about what they do and how they work, as opposed to finding out how this person really needs help and what they can do to kind of achieve those goals.
Exactly. Like, how do they see the world, and what's their belief system, and
True.
What do they make of this happening? And
True.
And it might be a very different worldview than we have. So
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you already answered what success is kind of up in the air. It depends on who's monitoring what outcome. But when do you, Karen Drucker, consider a session successful?
And are you talking about like with a lawyer client or one of my clients?
Well, I would say more like, to your counseling for lawyers, like, well, maybe a little bit of hybrid of both. Tell me what's a successful session looks like for a client, and then, one of your own.
I mean, it probably is a hybrid. So I would say that if a session goes really well with either with my client or a psychodrama with a lawyer's client, that the client has access to their own resources, like they can really tap into their own strengths and even imagine bringing those strengths with them into the courtroom or into the deposition. They're able to be more congruent in what they say, what they do, and how they feel. So their words, emotions, actions are more congruent, which makes them more believable, because communication is about 70% nonverbal. And they've grown a little bit, perhaps more connected to their emotions around whatever happened. So they're able to access their anger. If they're angry, they're able to access their sadness. They're more connected to their authentic emotions. And then hopefully they have a greater sense of belief in themselves. And this might not be with one session with a lawyer's client, but with one of my clients, having a greater sense of belief in themselves, able to ask for support more directly, maybe developed more trust and connection to their own inner wisdom. Those are the kinds of things I like to see.
That sounds beautiful. And now I'm wondering, lawyers probably just need to come see you, not hire you. Right? That's what I'm seeing.
I think everybody needs some really good therapy. Let's say that. And I've seen a lot of lawyers who are just the biggest hearts in the world and also have their own trauma, which is sometimes what brought them into the field, like really wanting to support other people and help other people when they didn't get the help they needed at a time.
Good point. Yeah.
It's interesting. Sometimes, and there's the flip side of it too, where people find out that maybe it wasn't what they expected. That they thought they were gonna become a lawyer to go out and right wrongs and help the downtrodden or whatever. And it's more about reading documents and logging hours, and it can be soul crushing. It really can.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of different ways that this kind of fits in.
Karen, just parlaying right into it. How can our audience learn more about you? Where they can find you?
Well, I have a website. It's a pretty simple website. It's Drucker, my last name, druckerpsychology.com. I also have for people in Colorado, I have a psychodrama training group, both in Boulder and in Fort Collins. And I've had lawyers in the training group before. So I'd welcome any lawyers who might want to be in the training group, or any lawyers who want therapy. That's fine too.
10 questions we ask everyone.
10 questions we ask everyone. Number 1.
All right.
What was the last book you read?
Everything I Didn't Tell You by Celeste. She's an Asian American. It's hard to say her last name, NG.
Okay.
She's a fantastic writer.
Number 2. What is your best habit?
I make a salad for lunch every day.
That
you
is
risk
fantastic.
Taker. You risky lady.
Especially that's one of the best answers I've ever had to that. Okay, number 3.
Pretty good habit.
It isn't. Yeah. Number 3. Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, or none of the above?
I'd say Facebook maybe once every couple weeks.
Cool. Number 4. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Right on. That is the correct answer. Number 5.
Decaf.
Oh, it's correct.
Yeah.
That. Number 5. What is your favorite place?
Oh my God. Probably so many, but Esalen, Big Sur, California. Esalen Institute.
Very good. Okay, number 6.
Favorite sacred place.
It's beautiful. Number 6. Is Keanu Reeves a good actor?
I have no idea.
It's acceptable. Sorry, it's all good. It's all good. Number 7.
Okay.
What was your first job?
Like after college or before?
Number 1, the first job.
First job. I was a lifeguard for National Park Service at Glen Canyon Recreation Area in Lake Powell, Arizona.
How cool is that?
That's way
It was
cool.
it was a fantastic job. I loved it.
All right, number 8. What is a skill you have outside of your current occupation that you incorporate into your work?
I do a conscious dance practice called Soul Motion Body Mantra. It's similar to 5 Rhythms. It's a conscious movement practice, and I use something I just do for me, but I use a lot of learning from that practice in my work.
Nice.
With students.
Number 9. What sites, blogs, or newsletters do you regularly check in with? I'm so old. I'm not high tech, right? I read Time Magazine, or I read. Perfectly acceptable.
Totally acceptable.
Is an answer. That's okay.
I actually still get the paper every morning. I read the Daily Camera.
Oh, I used to love getting the paper.
I love getting the paper. And I have a Bernese mountain dog who goes out and gets the paper every morning and brings it back.
That is the best. That is the best.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, we still get National Geographic delivered. And I just something about print, it's just.
I know, I love it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, we've made it to the end. Number 10. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
I like to cook. I like to take my dogs for a hike. I like I go to yoga. I love hanging out in the sun. And I read novels. They got to be really good novels.
For show notes, links, and info, go to www.consultwebs.com/lawsomepodcast. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.